Thank you for joining us today. Just wanted to first of all start by saying this session will be recorded. We know there are people that won't have the opportunity to join us today that are certainly interested in this session. So we will be recording. As I mentioned, this session is delivered by CareersNow. This is Food and Beverage Ontario's new workforce development initiative for Ontario's food and beverage processing sector. The program was launched to connect job seekers with employers in Ontario's food and beverage processing industry. And essentially what we're doing is delivering mentorship sessions, job fairs, as well as offering training, which is essential skills training, 30 hours of free training or micro credentials. So that's kind of like the overview of the program. And we will kick off this session with our speakers. First up is Emily, and I'll just give you an idea of what to expect. Speakers will take about 10 minutes to talk about their career, talk about their education, their career path, and essentially talk about the industry in general as well. And hopefully we learn a little something about the career paths that are available in food safety and auditing. We definitely have the right people here to talk about those things. So I will pass it over to Emily. We will wrap up at 5 o'clock. And after the session, certainly there'll be time for questions. So we will wrap up by 5 o'clock today though. So over to you, Emily. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Great to be here and, to be able to share some of my experience. So my name is Emily Nguyen. I currently work for a company called Cisco. Cisco owns pretty much a lot of big distribution warehouse along with some of their specialty meat and seafood companies as well. And I am currently the Food Safety and Quality Assurance Director there. I actually went to school for chemistry, thinking I was gonna go into the pharmaceutical industry, and decided to actually not pursue pharmacy school and started working kind of see, where I want to go, right? You're recently graduate from college, you might go with the career path that you pick for your degree. You might decide, hey, I want to see what else is out there before I actually pursue a higher degree. So I actually started in the food industry when I lived in Fresno, which is Central California, back in 2010. I started off as a QA assistant, so it's kind of not even QA itself. I was just helping out during one of their transition. It was for a spice and dehydrated vegetable company. From there, I decided, hey, I'm in the Central Valley. This is where a lot of ad companies are. So let's see what else is out there. So I started doing a lot of temp work after that. I worked briefly for a pasta company, did, micro lab analysis for a little bit. Then in about around 2013, I decided to move back to the Bay Area, which is San Jose, California. So Northern California. And I briefly worked for a nutraceutical company. I'm like, hey, that's kind of in line with, where I went to school for, which was to get a chem degree. Then at that time, I actually got reached out by another company called Cargill. So Cargill is actually a really big company as well. They wanted me to do QA for one of their salt facility area. So I said, Cargill is actually a really good company name, and I worked with them in the past before as one of my customers from previous companies I worked for. And so I decided to be with them for a while. And I love working for a company that had really good mission and value like Cargill. After about almost 5 years with them, I decided, hey, I've done enough of this. I want to move on to, being in the management role. So I started looking around. A few companies reached out to me. One was a meat company. They wanted me to work for their QA as a QA manager in their meat division. So I said, great. That's something I've never done before. So let's see what this is about. So it was kind of like my first experience as a manager. And the funny thing is my first time dealing with USA inspector as well too. And you hear stories about federal inspectors and how horrible they are, but I actually met some really great inspector, and one of this inspector also had a facility, and one of his facility is with Cisco. So they were actually looking for a QA director at the time, and they reached out to him, asked him who he knew. He recommended me. He didn't tell me this, by the way. I only found out about it after I started working for Cisco. Went interview for them, they loved me, and now here I am as the QA director. So it kind of helps to, have a good relationship with people, even people that you don't think you should have really good relationship with. But definitely one of my favorite inspector, who's now retired, by the way. But so I'm currently here working, as the head of kind of like the lead QA for Cisco Specialty Meat and Seafood in Fremont, California. And in my current role, kind of like my day-to-day is, when you work in QA, it's not always the same thing every day. One day you might have to do a lot of paperwork. The next day you might have emergencies happening. And I kind of, like to see the QA department as problem solvers for the production team. So they come to us with problems, but they also come to us to try to help them find solution as well too. So I deal a lot with kind of overseeing the overall food safety and quality and sanitation division here at this facility. And then some of my other time that I spent would be working on research and development, working on new projects with potential customers or even current customers. And, there's a lot of continuous improvement projects that, every company loves to work on, one of the things that really make you want to stay in a role like QA is the fact that your day is never boring. You're always going to be able to work with different departments, try to build that relationship, work on almost like working on their problems. And a lot of times they do have a lot of problems. The other part of my day, I'm spent talking to USDA. Sometimes I have FDA that come on site. And that also includes like the state and federal inspector as well too. I've been doing QA for about 11 years now, and I don't want to change a thing. When I first started on this career path, I was thinking, I'm only going to do this briefly. I might go back to pharmacy school. I might not. But the more that I, work for all these different companies, the more I realize that it's truly also the people that you work with, right? And one of the things that I love is the company that I work for. So like Cisco is definitely a great company. I love that you can grow with within your field. And a lot of times I hear people say QA is almost like a dead-end career, and I don't believe that's true. I believe that as you work through different products in your career path, you'll run into different hazards and different learning experience. Sometimes, you work in seasoning and you think, oh, okay, I'm a little bored with this product. Let me go to meat. Let me go to seafood. Let me go to, ready to eat. So there's always new things that you can be learning. And if you don't really want to be in a food safety role, there's always things that you can do that is, your skills that you learn is transferable. So you can also go into research and development. You can become an auditor. I've known a lot of auditors who audit for GFSI, they were prior QA managers and QA directors. Or, you can even work for the government. USDA, FDA, they're always trying to recruit people. I know because they're always trying to recruit me. But I don't believe that it's a dead-end goal. Dead-end career. I think it's just whatever you make of it, And so if you really are passionate about food safety and auditing and quality, and I think, this career path is really a really good choice, and people got to eat. So it's also very stable career path. One of the things I always tell my employees is, as you're going through your career, make mistakes. Sometimes I don't even know the answer, and there's always a problem, but there's more than one answer to that problem. So if you're the type of person that loves to ask why did something happen? Why did you, why did, this hazard happened or this incident occurred? If you're the type of person that loves to ask why and try to find the answer, this career path is so great because you would never stop asking that question. Another thing is, I always tell my employee, you have to love the work that you do, and you have to love the company that you work for. And that's how you become successful in any job that you do. And a lot of times, I always question myself, is this kind of like the path that I want to take? And I always kind of ponder about my next 5 to 10 years in my career. And no matter what, however I looked at it, food safety is the path that I want to go in. One of the other advice I would want to give all the students out there is look for people who can mentor you. Throughout my career, I probably have about 3 to 4 people that I would consider my biggest mentor in my career. One of them is a boss that I had at Cargill. He basically told me that I want to train you to basically sit where I'm sitting. So everything I know, I want you to know. And I thought that was great because, you don't really find a lot of, managers that are like that, right? That really want to train you and be able to be successful in your role. They just kind of want you to do your job and go home. He was probably my number one mentor when I was at Cargill. Then, I come to Cisco and I have 2 to 3 really great mentor as well too. One of them is my boss. Another one is another executive manager of mine. And they really push you to kind of be better than you were yesterday. So I think if you can find those people who are really good mentors to you, then you will also be very successful in your role. And another thing that I also tell my employees is, go to training. Sometimes, your employer will let you go to certain trainings, but you have to apply them, right? So don't just go to training just because you want a check mark on your resume. Go to training and then apply them at work. And then when you do these trainings, like really think how it applies to your day-to-day job. But the other thing also is sometimes you have to do your own training and your own development as well too. So really own your own development. No one's going to do it for you. You might have an employer who will lay down, certain foundation for you, but you really have to take that and really go with it. A lot of my employees in the past have said, if you want to go to this training, great, go to it. So money for them wasn't the issue. But once I came back from that training, I had to present to them, these are the key things that I learned. How would this apply to my job? And at first I thought, why would they send me a training only so I can come back and, do homework? But as I'm doing this, as I'm going through the training, I'm going back and I'm applying it to my day-to-day, I realized that it's very valuable. It's the kind of things that you don't really get to do if you don't have a good employer that believes in you, right? So training is great. Check it off on your resume, check it off on your job application. But once you apply it and you actually see how it applies to you, I think that's very valuable.
I agree, 100%. That was great. Thank you so much. I think your advice is spot on with regards to mentors as well. And you indicated how you found mentors, and I think that that's important. There are options out there to connect with people and network and ask. I think you're right. Ask somebody, and you'll see that most people say yes, and we'll give you their time. I have about 4 or 5 questions for you, but I'm going to wait till the end, and obviously, look at the questions that have come in from our viewers here. So next we will go to Girish. I will allow you to introduce yourself, but tell us about your education, your background, your experience, and some nuggets of wisdom for our students and job seekers. So over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Nicole. I hope you guys can see me. There's some sun falling on my face, so I think you guys are good with that. So my name is Girish Raina. I work for the province of Ontario. I started as a dairy plant specialist. Thank you. I started as a dairy plant specialist, but now they call me as a food safety inspector. So I'm working right now as a food safety inspector with the province of Ontario. I cover all over the province, right from southwestern Ontario till Kapuskasing. So I'm a food science graduate. I graduated in 1996, and I majored in dairy sciences. I did my studies in India, and after my studies, I got a co-op opportunity in Nestle. So it's an infant cereal producing facility. So I started there as a production officer. So basically, it was a shift supervisor and also a team lead for HESA. So I worked for Nestle for 6 years. So those 6 years were the basic building block of my whole knowledge, which I still use it. Like it's one of the best companies I've worked with. I got an opportunity to work with the people who designed the food safety and quality assurance system. So not only the auditing part, like what goes behind designing of a food safety system. So I got an opportunity working with that. So that really helps me till today. So after 6 years working with Nestle, I started working with Government of India. I got an opportunity work with agency name as Export Inspection Agency. So the main job was to audit the food facilities which are exporting. So I got trained under EU regulations, European Union regulation and US regulation, because most of the exporting companies were exporting to EU and US. And I got certified as a HESUP auditor. That was the first my food safety certification, a formal certification. And I also got certified as an ISO 9001 lead auditor. I worked for that agency for Government of India for 6 years. And that was a big opportunity for me, because I got out of Nestle and now I used to audit different food establishments. So not only dairy, so it was meat, spices, fruit and vegetables, anything you name it under so honey, everything. That I really enjoyed working over there. And after that, I migrated to Canada. Once in Canada, I did some survival jobs. I did some consultancy work, developing some programs and policies for facilities, helping them getting certification for HESUP and GFSCI and like SQF, BRC, ISO 22000. And then I joined a spice company known as Newlyweds Food. So I worked there as a food technician and in the quality assurance department. So after 2 years working there, I joined Saputo. So those who are in the dairy sector, they know that Saputo is Canada's the biggest dairy processor. So I've joined their Tavistock facility. It's a cheese producing facility, and I joined there as a HESUP coordinator. I was implemental in getting the BRC certification in the facility. And after that, I helped 3 more facilities, Saputo facilities, getting BRC. And then I shifted my focus to technical services. So they had a technical services department. So I got shifted in technical services. I spent 2 years in technical services. And then I got career changed. I did my career change move, and I moved to the province of Ontario's food safety inspector. So I joined as a dairy plant specialist under the open competition. So basically my job is right from the very scratch, if somebody wants to set up a dairy processing facility, I had them implementing all the policies and regulations, selecting the site, selecting the equipment. So once they get license, so I also do their inspection and audit to provide them a license. So once they're licensed, so we do annual inspections and sampling to keep that license. And I also do food of plant origin inspections, like on-farm inspections for food processors, maple syrup, honey. So I also license them. This is the latest one right now. This is my scope. And I'm also thinking of moving to the meat program because meat is one of the biggest program we have. The province has it. So maybe in the near future, I'll move to the meat program. So with my job, day in and day out, I do lots of traveling. Really a lot of traveling. Like it all depends on what the priority of the day is. If I'm having a recall investigation, so I do that. If somebody is having some technical issue with their plant, so I'm there. I will drive over there and do that. So every day is different. Like I don't know, like tomorrow what's going to happen. So that really keeps my life very, very interesting. So one of the thing I like is if there are customer complaints, so I go and do those investigations. I was involved in 4 of the recall investigations since last 5 years. So that was a big learning curve for me. I like to mentor in my facility. My facilities are like 2-man operation till like a medium facility or a big facility like 300 people operation. So I like to mentor the QA people over there or the production people over there. I found it out with my experience. The facilities which I'm working with, if I mentor, if I drive the people over there, they ultimately make my life easy. If the professional I am auditing or who's working over there, I'm working with, if they understand the concepts of the food safety, the basic concepts of what I'm wanting for them, so it makes my work very easy. So I really like to mentor. And like Emily said, the biggest part is like you never know who is going to help you, like what network is you are going to use. So I have seen, I have when I mentor people, I've worked with some people. So if there is an opening in any facility where I am inspecting or I'm auditing, so I always say that why don't you try that person. So that's one thing I really enjoy with this job, seeing people grow. I have seen people growing from a lab technician to a director of QA. So that's one of the things which I really like in my job. As I said, the passion which comes for the food safety is driving me, and the thing that every day is different in my job. This always keeps me very motivated, and meeting different people, solving their issues. So that's also keeps me motivated. One of when I was doing my audit work, what helps me, I have experience of 25 years right now in food industry. So food safety audit or food quality assurance, this whole thing is so vast. Like the scope is so vast. When I'm working with my clients, so they may need help for someone who can help them with the labeling. They need sometimes help with somebody who can develop their food safety programs. Some of the clients need help in developing their HACCP. So I have always found that the people who have technical knowledge or who have got a hands-on approach, like who have developed the system and then they have audited it, those guys are different than the people who have got just the certification knowledge. So if you want to be different or if you want to advance in your career, so just don't concentrate on getting the certification or audit certification. It will, in the long run, it will help you if you have made your hands dirty. If you know how to develop a system, it will help you a lot when you're auditing the system. Because when you're auditing or when you're inspecting, if you're giving about 5-10% of improvement of a feedback to your clients, you will always be appreciated. Otherwise, it's just like, yeah, you are visiting a client for inspection or audit, and client has to bear with you because you're their auditor or inspector. But if you have experience, if you have a knowledge of how to build up a system and then you give that feedback when you're doing your inspection and audits, your clients will always welcome you, and you will really enjoy your job day in and day out. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. And it's interesting. I know that the role of an auditor is definitely in demand. It's one that we hear about a lot through the program, through food grads, that there aren't enough auditors out there. So it's definitely an in-demand position. And I like the fact that you mentioned so much travel involved. I think that that's something that's appealing to a lot of people. Not everyone, but if people like to travel and the diversity. I do have questions for you too, but let's get to some of the ones that have been asked. And I'll just direct them to you both, and that way we'll probably get some different perspectives. But the first one, for someone who would like to work in this department, food safety or becoming an auditor, what requirements would you suggest, or prerequisites do you think that someone should have? Emily, maybe you want to go there. What do you look for when you hire people?
So one of the things that I think people don't know is a lot of companies love hiring newly grads. The reason why I say that, especially in QA, is because when you're newly grad from college, you're almost like a whiteboard. You're going to be someone that they can grow, that they can mold, and it's a lot of companies really look for that. So companies that if you really want to get into the space and really work in food safety and quality, or even as an auditor, is to look for companies that have programs for newly grad college students. So Cargill is definitely one of them. I know that because they're always actively recruiting recent grads, and Cargill is worldwide, right? You can definitely go and onto their website, look at their career, or even reach out to some of the recruiters that does like college recruiting. And I know a lot of them really love employing newly graduate students. So that's a really great company that you can look into. Now, let's say, maybe you don't have a Cargill near you, or you don't want to move to a company in an area that you don't want to live in. Another advice I would give is to really go in and look at, kind of like the beginning level of a job posting, right? So if I want to be in QA, I will look at some QA tech position. And a lot of that will require no experience other than maybe a degree. They may not even require a degree, but when you look in there, they'll tell you exactly what they want. They'll put in there some of the requirements. So I would start with some of the requirements there, and then kind of see if maybe you have to go and do additional training classes that you can take, or maybe something at your college that you can have, or maybe find someone that's already in that field that can also give you some feedback on there. But definitely look at some job posting. That's really a good place to start. Some of the techs that I actually do hire, a lot of times I look for personality. I look for someone that is kind of like a people person, as well as someone who is very fast learner, right? You don't really have to have a foundation in food safety. I trained quite a few people that actually went from, technician role to a supervisor role. And they were great because they have that personality, that drive. And then as for me personally, I did a lot of entry-level work when I first started out. I didn't really mind doing temp work, doing contractor work, because those were experiences that I, wanted to get my feet wet in, but not necessarily maybe commit to, working for that company full time. Especially if you're, in your last year of college and, you just want to find a part-time job. I would look at some of, like a temp work or contractor work. And then the other advice is, basically just look at ASQ and look at some of the certification that you can get as food safety auditor. So there's training classes that you can take along with certification. And so if you have one of those certification, it just makes your resume stronger.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Girish, do you want to unmute and just jump in here? I was going to absolutely agree with what Emily said, with the additional training and anything you can, add to sort of the meat to your resume.
I totally agree to Emily. And if you guys are interested in working in government, so both the CFIA and the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, we have got programs for co-op students. We highly encourage, and we really are looking for students who want to take the food safety and inspection programs as a career choice. So just join us, like apply for the co-op and see how it works. Go for the co-op. And if not, if you want to go for the private sector, and if you are just a student, yeah, why not? I started my career as a lab technician. And as I told you, like if you get your hands dirty, it will serve you, it will help you a lot once you are in the management position, because it really have to know how the things work in the bottom. So yeah, so but if you want to work as a consultant, if you want to work in a food certification body or auditing body, I still recommend that start with a processing facility, because if you are just getting a certification and joining a certification body, you won't know the real picture. So right career path I suggest, or I suppose, is to join production or get a couple of years, know how the production works, and then get your certification. Start with the HACCP, get a SQF practitioner certification, and then it will make you more knowledgeable. That's my experience is that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'm just looking here to see if so we can get to that. One thing that I wanted to ask you both was in terms of expectation setting. I think a lot of people, they go to college, they graduate, and they want that big job as soon as they come out of school. And in my experience recruiting in the industry, I know that food companies definitely have a bias towards promoting from within. Emily, you touched on it with the fact that you have groomed people that started in it as a QA tech, and there's now supervisor, and it happened for yourself too. So maybe you could talk a little bit about setting expectations and some of the jobs that you might need to do, or for how long before you take that, or even offered that next step. And to sort of piggyback off that, is it wise to keep moving from company to company? I know what I think there. Or should you, take a few years at the same company and look around, work your way up, build that solid foundation? What's your advice there?
So one of the advice that I've ever had when I was starting out was from one of the executive managers I had. He suggested that it's actually a pretty good idea to kind of move into different roles after about 2 to 3 years. And if you work for a big corporation, there's always going to be opportunities for you to move within that organization, right? So let's say, for example, if you work for a company that has many different products under that umbrella. So if you work for a company that does spices, you work for a company that does dairy, and they're all under that same umbrella, you can actually talk to your manager and supervisor, maybe being able to move from spice to dairy. And that's, a way for you to kind of move and maybe not leave a company if you really love working for that company. A lot of times I know that smaller companies, so companies that just have one location, they also really are great on growth as well too, because you don't get lost in, a sea of people, right? So you might just kind of be you and a small team there, and you can always make a role for yourself within that company as well too. So I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen in big companies. It's just all about communication with your manager and your superior. Now, there has been, circumstances where people, they're kind of already at the top and they don't really have any other way to move, maybe in that location. You have to kind of be willing to move, maybe cities or states or country to kind of grow where you want to be. And, if not, then there's nothing wrong with, seeking out another company to work on your growth as well too.
Yeah. I mean, I would say from a recruiter standpoint, you never want to see that job hopping, like, too much movement and not giving yourself time in one role. But, I would say, look for the jobs within your company, exactly what you just said. Put your hand up for projects if there's an opportunity to. And just like you said, communication, make sure HR know that you're interested to move up, to try different things. I mean, I love that advice. Girish, do you have anything to add there?
No, totally agree. Not only in food sector, any sector, your networking and your communication, two big things. Like these are the things they will take you further and further. Keep your networking strong, work on your communications and expectations. If you are a new graduate coming from the university, like, yeah, don't get frustrated. Like, that's the reality, and especially in the food industry. And you can see example of Emily. She's not a food science graduate. Like, I've got my colleagues. One of my colleague is uh, physics graduate. He's got undergraduate degree in physics. So the things are very different in the food until and unless you are a specialized, like you are doing some research, you did your masters and go. But for working in the management level for a food safety or working as a food safety auditor, if you have got some good communication, you've got the basic aptitude and have some perseverance, like you will go further and further. Try wherever you're working, keep on, bring your best over there, try to learn whatever you can over there. So and have patience. So you will succeed.
Yeah, I've got a question here. Can you advise on the path for people with some college experience in biology and microbiology, but they're willing to move into food safety? How would they begin? What would your advice be?
So for microbiology, you can work. Microbiology is a big thing. Like, you can work in a lab, you can work in a testing lab. Right now, we are having lots of demand for microbiology. If you've got experience working with the pathogens, you can working in the testing lab. Or you can just join a food company and work in the QA department and HACCP team. If we require a good person with a good, strong strength within the microbiology, you can start your career over there.
Emily, anything to add there?
Biology is actually a lot closer to food safety than, I guess, my chem degree. So I think you wouldn't have any issues with finding, a job in food safety that way. But one of the things is it all comes down to kind of like the company you work for and their QA structure as well too. So depending on their QA structure or the product that they work with, you might do more in kind of like a lab setting, or you might be just directly into a QA role that doesn't have to do with any lab at all. So it just kind of depends on the company that you are applying for and what that company structure looks like.
And while you're on, Emily, I was going to ask you. You talked about Cargill and some, in the past. Now you're working for Cisco. I think one of the things that confuses some people, and one of the things that I've certainly found as a recruiter and working with students and grads, unless the company is on the shelf, like Girish mentioned, Nestle, and people know Nestle. They don't necessarily know Cisco. They don't necessarily know Cargill. What would you have to say about the job search and how to find out about the companies but you may not know the company name necessarily, but they're some of the most amazing companies to work for. They're just not on the grocery shelf that people are familiar with.
Yeah, so a lot of companies, are really big on their brand. So like if you work for, a company like Cisco or Kellogg, you definitely know their product, right? Companies like Cargill and Cisco, they're more like a supplier. So unless you actually work for another, maybe, food company, or maybe you work in, the food service industry, you might not necessarily know them. But, I also don't know a lot of food companies that are out there, and there's some really great ones out there. The way that I found these companies is I, looked on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really great resource for anyone who's job searching or anyone who, looking for employees as well too. And LinkedIn would definitely, have all the jobs that, would be available in your area or in the area that you want to live and work in. But definitely before I work for a company, definitely Google them, look them up, read about them. A lot of times, a company might have a really good reputation as a supplier, but they might not be the best employer for you. So definitely would look at those. And then another thing is I always talk to, former mentors or old bosses, or even my current boss. And a lot of times they have years of experience working for all these other companies, and they would talk, you know, about them, like, you know, when I would work here or there, and I would definitely hear, you know, how it would be like to work for them, and kind of like how they are as an employer as well too.
And before I let you go and go to Girish, small versus large, what would your advice be there? We hear that a lot, like we had to say, should I start off in a small company? And I always say, you know, you can wear lots of hats in a smaller company rather than having a specific role in a larger company. What would your advice be, or what's your experience been there?
So for me, I didn't think that I would like big corporations, but apparently I love big corporations because one of my two, you know, favorite employer has been Cargill, and it's currently Cisco. I love working for bigger companies because yes, you could get lost in the sea of people, but I think if you are a go-getter, a very motivated person, a great team player, just overall like a really great employee, you won't get lost in those sea of people, because there'll be a lot of opportunities, especially if you have a great mentor or a great manager. They will help you grow in the company, because one of the things that, you know, with the pandemic is having a lot of issues hiring employees right now, right? And so there's a really high demand for people, especially in food safety. I'm trying to hire, and I'm having issues, you know, finding people that would even want to work in QA. So that's one of the reasons why I love companies like that are bigger, because you have a lot of resources, right? We have a whole team of recruiters, we have, you know, a whole team of HR individuals, and so there's a lot of resources there. But that doesn't mean that it's always going to be for everybody. And there are some really good things about working for smaller companies as well too, because in a smaller company, you can also kind of make more what your role is, right? Because you might be the only one, or maybe 2 out of 3 of the only one in QA. And so if you take on new projects, if you're able to work well with people, work on different things with different departments, you can actually, you know, change your position to be something more without having to skip through hoops that you would in a big corporation.
Yeah, good answer. Girish, what's your perspective there? You've worked a number of years and certainly gone into different plants as your role. What would your advice be there?
Regarding the small versus big, or
just, you know, small, like, you know, what's your advice if someone can't decide whether they should be going for jobs at those larger corporations versus the smaller plants, the small to medium sized producers?
If someone is really struggling getting the foot into the door, right now is a good opportunity. Like Emily nailed it. I am having so many issues with all my clients. Like I work with some of my clients who are in remote area, and they are having hard time hiring people. For me, if you are a new graduate, you want to start fresh, and you can relocate. Start with somewhere which is less competition. If you like the company, if you like the product, if you like the challenge, start with it. Like the quality of life is very different in the smaller locations. If you're really struggling in getting into this thing, so I really will recommend the fresh graduates or somebody who wants to get into the food safety small with a small this thing. And there are lots and lots of people who are looking for my clients who are looking for people to work with them. And like the advantage for working with a smaller company is like you get to learn a lot. Right? It's a strong learning curve. If the owner gives you free rein, like you learn so much things. Not only the QA, the production, everything, the hands-on thing is. It's such a big learning approach. But if you don't get into a big company, I think small companies I won't hold myself back, because the learning experience is pretty good over there.
Yeah. Well, and you've shown the transition that can be made from small to larger companies to government, you know, which I think that's the key. There's the career paths available within the industry are vast. And again, that's why we're doing these sessions. I think the last question I will ask of both of you is, what would you say are the biggest misconceptions with regards to working in the food and beverage industry? You know, this program doesn't exist without the fact that there are challenges. Everybody's experiencing challenges now because of COVID with hiring. But even prior to COVID, I don't know, the industry doesn't seem sexy, or it's not top of mind when people are thinking about their career path. You know, perhaps they think of food service, restaurants, culinary, that side of things, but not really food processing. So Emily, let's go to you. What would you say were the biggest misconceptions, and that if people actually took a chance and explored career paths in the food and beverage processing sector, they might be pleasantly surprised about?
I would think it's, you know, when you're first starting out, I think one of the hardest challenge is understanding the process and the product itself. A lot of times I do end up hiring people that, you know, figure out that this career path isn't for them. And that's because they think it's kind of like one of those jobs that's like a 9 to 5, right? It's like you go in, you work and you go home. But when you work in food safety, a lot of times it's not just those set hours. You might end up having to work longer hours, or, you know, working earlier or later on at night. I think that's something that they don't really expect when they work in food safety. So especially, I guess, maybe in California, especially in my surrounding area, there's a lot of tech companies. So a lot of those companies, you know, have better hours in general. You know, another challenge I have is also just people in general not understanding what a role would be in food safety and quality. It's not something that maybe in, you know, your surrounding area, there might not be a lot of people that, you know, went to school for that career, or just don't quite know about it, right? A lot of times when I say I work in the food industry, they automatically think I work in like as a waitress or a chef or a cook. And when I tell people that, you know, I actually, you know, deal with regulations and, you know, processes and policies, like, oh, do you work like for the government? So a lot of people don't quite understand, but just because we don't have a lot of colleges around in my area that is really focused on kind of like the agricultural industry, right? So a lot of times it's really hard for us to find people that understand what food safety means, or even is in a food science major. We had a college nearby that was doing meat science at one point, and in 2014, they decided not to do that anymore. So it's just, I feel like it's, you know, farming life. It's like one of those paths that's like dying. And it's really sad because there's always a need for someone to work in food safety. There's always a need for someone to be an auditor. You know, without us in our role, a lot of, you know, we would have a lot more recalls, and a lot of times people don't realize that.
Mm-hmm. I've just seen a comment that Kieran said they agree with you. They've got lots of feedback, people saying they, after they graduated, people think of cooking school. And one of the things that I did through working with CareersNow, and also through Food Grads, who's the program partner for CareersNow, was explain that people can enter into the industry from a food service role. Like if they love to cook, if they love to the culinary, they love food. And there's a, like you mentioned at the beginning, the fact that food doesn't go anywhere. You know, it's a pretty secure industry. And if you have a love for cooking and for food, there's a place for you in food processing. So if you're a chef, you could become a corporate chef, you know, in the food processing. And that takes away those hours that you might not like so much, or at least worked for you while you were younger, but now you've got a house and a mortgage and a family, maybe the late nights don't work for you anymore. So taking that love of food and that culinary expertise and bringing it over to the food industry, food processing industry, makes a lot of sense. The salaries are good. I think that's another misconception, that it's like, you know, hourly minimum wage, and that's just not the case. As a recruiter working on a ton of different roles through different departments, I can certainly attest to that. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Girish, do you have anything to add there on any misconceptions or questions that you've had over the years that you're just like blown away that people just don't get it?
Yeah, I've heard about this thing that especially the foods working in the QA and food safety guys are the dead end jobs. They are not appreciated because it's all about production, and QA are just the paper thing. Just the QA people are there to just fill up papers, and But I will say that like that's the challenge. Like you have to learn, you have to give value to your employer. If you are working in the QA or if you're working in the food safety, the whole thing is you have to think, yeah, food safety is good, but if you're going to sell it to the management or to your employer, you have to give them, in addition to what you are trying to suggest them, if you are doing an audit, so bring the value. So that's the whole challenge. That's the whole fun in that. Not only the food safety part, when you tell how you're continuously improving it, and if you can link your audit or your food safety part with where the management or your client or your employer can make money into that. So if you can figure it out, if you are that whole communication jigsaw puzzle, if you can mix it, so that's what it makes very interesting and challenging.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I mean, we have a speaker missing today, and you know, whilst we miss her, you guys have been amazing, so knowledgeable, and sharing your experience. And you know, it's people like you that share your experience, share your career story, that will make a difference, and will really, you know, do attract the next generation of people that will move into the food and beverage processing sector. We couldn't do any of this without you. There was one question from Peters that was around job search, and I will add that if you are a job seeker, you can go to jobseeker.careersnow.ca, and there is where you can access these mentorship sessions. We have 3 under our belts. This is the 3rd. We have a bunch more to come, and the next one is on November 9th on product development and R&D. These sessions are recorded and they can be accessed there as well. So previous recordings are housed there as well, so you can see that. And thank you, Devon, who's added the link to join. So you create a profile, you can access the mentorship sessions, you can access the essential skills training that we talked about. And as Emily and Girish both said, if you can add to your resume, you know, with some skills, some experience, you definitely boost your resume to the top of the pile. You know, in these times, you know, people need, you know, these hiring managers need people that can hit the floor running, and if you can add that training and skills, then you're ahead of the curve there. So I think I've covered everything off. So yeah, you go to jobseeker.careersnow.ca to look for jobs, to access the mentorship, and to access the training that we're offering. Again, thank you so much, Emily and Girish. We couldn't do this without you. I really appreciate your time. I promise to get you off before 5 o'clock so that everyone can get on with their evening. Thank you all for attending today. And as we said, anyone that registered for this event will receive the recorded version, and so you won't miss it if you were not able to join us today. And yeah, thank you so much. Come and join us for the upcoming sessions. I appreciate your time today, everyone.